Amber Valletta is a model, actress, and activist. Discovered at age 15, you can jump in and correct me if I say anything wrong. Discovered at age 15, Amber modeled alongside other supers like Kate Moss, Naomi Campbell, and Shalom Harlow, who we just heard about. She left modeling to pursue acting in 2000, taking roles in both television and film. Arguably the most successful model to take up acting, Amber has starred in Revenge, Legend, and the 2005 rom-com Hitch with Will Smith. Sober since she was 25, Amber is an outspoken advocate on the need for greater support of drug and alcohol addiction recovery. In 2014, she launched her socially conscious e-commerce platform, Master and Muse?
2013.
2013, focusing her efforts on how to comment on slave labor in fashion. Amber has appeared on the cover of American Vogue 16 times, is that right? And today, it was just announced that she was named the new sustainability editor for British Vogue. Congratulations, girl.
Thank you.
So awesome. I can't believe it was announced today.
I know. What
cool.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's kismet. It's kismet that we scheduled today, that was announced today, and this is what we're here to talk about today. So before we get into the interview, if you could create your only one statement for me by finishing the sentence, I am the only
supermodel who's chosen to be arrested for climate change.
Yes, yes. That I know of anyway.
Yeah.
Right? So just a little bit about me.
It's good. I'm enough about me.
Enough about you, Amber Valletta.
I'm very happy to hear about you.
And no, I just wanted to mention that, I can't remember the year, but years and years and years ago,
90s.
When I was a upcoming publicist, you and I met when I was assigned to get Naomi Campbell to and from a private plane for the Unzipped film premiere, and then so it was a really kind of crazy night. The premiere after party was at Barney's. There was a red carpet. Everybody went there for the after party. I didn't succeed in getting her back to the plane, so I failed my mission.
I heard the details of the story. It's actually like you could write a movie.
I think Tom Cruise would have been useful. Mission Impossible.
Right? Yeah. It would have been. He would have been useful. But the bright spot of that evening, there were several bright spots, but one of them was I got to meet you, and then you and I connected years later and are creating this friendship, which I'm so grateful for.
Me too.
I was really inspired and excited after we had lunch at Barney's. We went back to the scene of the crime. And I was excited to see you anyway, but when you started talking about sustainability and climate change and just eco-activism and what your part is in trying to counter the results of, or the impact that we humans have done to our planet, over the years, I was inspired, and I looked at clothes differently. I went downstairs to shop and bought less because of our talk, and so this is why I wanted to bring you in to talk about this. But I wanted to just start with you. You grew up in Oklahoma. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I grew up in Oklahoma. My mom was a single parent, and she had me and my little brother, and probably needed a little break. She took my brother and I out to my grandparents' farm, and all my other cousins would come out on the weekends, probably so their parents could get a break. Right. And my grandparents just liked having everybody around. And we spent the entire weekend outside on the farm on 40 acres with two giant old barns and a bunch of animals and a beautiful spring-fed creek, or crick, is what we call it down there.
Right.
And it was very, idyllic and beautiful, and we had a lot of fun outside. And that's kind of where the love of nature, I think, started in me. And then my mom always used to say, if I was bored and coming in and complaining of being bored, she'd say, go outside and use your imagination. So I think just by virtue of being thrown outside all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah.
I just fell in love with the natural world.
Yes. Yeah, I read something about there being like snakes and mud, and like you could hear the joy in your explanation of what it was like. Which snakes and mud sound horrifying to me, but I can see from the picture you painted.
I think for probably people who grew up in a city, it's hard for them to understand, but as a child, it was magical for us, and we created a whole world. We had, there were a lot of kids. There were like 5 girls and a couple auxiliary boys, and this creek was like our, it was sort of the focal point, because there were like vines we could swing on and fall in the water and skipping rocks, and at one end there was sort of like a tiny beach, and we called it our Riviera, and we didn't even know where that was. And
you have like tadpoles and crayfish.
And crawfish. We'd catch them and put them in buckets, and my grandparents really lived in rural Oklahoma, outside the city. It was only 30 minutes, but it was rural really fast there. And they burned their trash, which is not so eco-friendly, but back then that's what they did. And we would take old cans and make, hot chocolate from the spring water. I mean, like everything, run from snakes. Everything had a sort of a purpose. I saw animals that were dying, and they would be lying in the field decomposing, and we just sort of saw things
differently.
We saw things.
Circle of life.
Yeah, we saw things being born and things dying, and there were lots of adventures, and I can't believe nobody got like bit by a snake or a nasty poisonous spider, because we were always up in the hayloft creating little houses and things. It's just all the magical moments I can think of in my childhood I see in my mind are from that, especially on that land. But my family also took us camping, and so it's when I think of home, I think of nature, and I think of Oklahoma's prairies and sunsets.
And your mom was, at that point, she was also really connected to the indigenous people, is that correct? And because you watched her get arrested, right?
Well, my grandfather is Native American, and he's Cherokee.
Your grandfather's Native American?
Yeah, he's Cherokee. We're actually on the rolls, so I have an Indian card.
I had no idea.
I know.
That's great.
It's amazing, actually. I've always been very proud of my heritage, but my grandfather was extremely proud of it and could speak a little Cherokee and researched our ancestors and stuff. Anyhow, my mom, with a group of many other people, stopped a nuclear power plant from being built on native land.
Wow.
And it was, it took them years. And at a few points they got arrested, and they were peacefully arrested. She told me later that it was all planned with the police and everything, and well orchestrated. So as a child I didn't know that. I just was terrified, which makes sense. You
totally
think your mom's not coming out of jail, but she did.
Yeah.
It's 24 hours, I guess. But she took us to protest. My cousins and my aunts, they were all part of it, and she took me and my little cousins to go protest. I'm not sure if that totally was that's not my total inspiration, but it did leave a mark on me. I remember thinking, wow, we're doing something that we probably shouldn't be doing. We're yelling at the top of our lungs at this corporation. And yet, at the same time, something about it felt very empowering, and that we were making a statement.
Yeah.
And I never forgot it. It's a strong memory.
Yeah. Well, and it is a through line for you. And,
it is a through line.
And you got to follow it up with what we're going to get to a little bit later. But so at age 15, you get discovered. Is that correct? How does that happen?
I guess my mom had been told that I should model and stuff, so she was very protective, but then she finally took me to an agency, local agency, and I had to sign up for classes and pay to be a model, and I hated it. I thought it was embarrassing, and I was a teenager.
You didn't like the class, or you didn't like modeling?
I just felt, I didn't even know what modeling was. I never looked at fashion magazines, and I was an athlete, and I just wasn't interested. I didn't know what it was. But she took me. I was a ham. I did like acting, so that part of it I liked. But they taught us some really funny stuff. They taught us to like mannequin model. Which I actually did in the mall, which is so embarrassing. I wish somebody had it on tape. Yeah,
my goodness.
It's like you literally are a mannequin, and every once in a while you change positions, but you have to pop and lock it. So you're like,
can we get that on video later?
Right?
Okay.
And then a scout came through, and he was from Italy, and he was looking for girls in obscure places like Tulsa, and
wow, and
asked if I wanted to come for the summer. And of course I wanted to go. I was 15. I wanted to go to Europe. I didn't know what modeling was, but so I begged my mom, and she cashed in I had some bonds, I guess, that she was going to use to pay for college or something. And
yeah, she
cashed them in, and I got to go with another girl and her mom.
Amazing. So tell me about those early days of modeling. What the life was like, you know, the glamorous outside and what it was really like inside, and the connections and who you met.
I mean, in the beginning it was really exciting and eye-opening, and I learned so much about everything, actually, because I was a pretty naive kid from Oklahoma. So to go to Europe and, you know, be surrounded by you know, art and
yeah. Did you have a base in Europe where you were, and then you would? At
first, I just went to Milan for the summer.
Okay.
And I just had a really good time, and I made money, and I was like, wow, this is cool. And then when I left home at 17 and went back to Europe to model full time, I started getting that probably teenage angst. It didn't hit me until a little bit later, and I felt a lot of you know, internal discrepancy between the money I was making and the world I was in. I didn't really, I could see fashion was somewhat vacuous, and I don't know, there was some connection or disconnection between the way I felt and what I was doing, and I didn't really understand it at the time, and I wouldn't blame it all on the industry. I think it was an internal thing.
Like it just wasn't in alignment with who you were?
It wasn't totally in alignment, and I just didn't really understand why. I think maybe I wasn't living from my values, and so I can't really put the blame on the industry.
Right.
But I think that's probably what it was, but I was so young, so
well, and also it makes sense because of the childhood that you described, so connected to the natural world, so involved in like literally the earth and the earth, you know, not literally, but to go from that to something that is so materialistic and beautiful.
Yeah.
But in a totally different way.
In a totally different way, and it was hard to, I didn't really understand at the time that, you know, I was making more money than my parents by the time I was, you know, 18. It was a hard thing to understand and grapple, and it sounds maybe ridiculous to some people, but to me, I wasn't raised that way, and we didn't have a lot growing up, so it just felt strange to me.
Well, it didn't have the same
guilty.
value, right?
I felt really guilty.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to find the balance, but and so, you know, I think that's when my battle with addiction started, and you know, the battle was lost very quickly.
Yeah.
Didn't last long, and I learned a lot, and have, you know, got sober really young, so I'm super grateful. But I wouldn't blame everything on the industry. I think some of that's just, you know, your own struggle to figure out who you are and what is important to you, and then of course there's life stuff. You know, my family wasn't perfect, so there's plenty of things to work out.
Right. You got sober while you were still modeling? Yeah. And then I know that there was a point where you cut your hair.
Oh, that was very early, though.
That was very early? Okay.
And when I was 18, yeah.
Because you were, there's a line that I'm going to quote you. You went from who's that girl to that girl.
Yeah.
Like when you cut your hair. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I was working as a model and doing really well, but I hadn't kind of like broken into the high fashion, you know, echelon, I guess. And I worked with a hairdresser on a job in France where I was living, and I had this sort of bob, similar sort of to what I have today, maybe not as cool. And I said to him, I think I should cut my hair super short. And he was like, no, you know, it's fine. And then he was like, how old are you? And I told him, and his mouth like hit the floor. He was like, I thought you were in your 20s, you know. And I was like, no, I'm only 18. And he was like, definitely you should cut your hair. That was me trying to do a French accent, by the way.
That was very good.
And so the next time I saw him, we couldn't do it then. The next time I saw him, which was during Fashion Week, probably, I don't know, that year at some point, we left, and I was at a fitting, and we left and went and cut my hair off. And it literally changed my career overnight.
Yeah.
That little pixie shag.
Yes. So then what happened?
So then what happened is, you know, like 3 months later, I got my first American Vogue cover.
Okay.
And
the first of 16.
The first of 16.
Yeah.
And you know, that the kind of waif grunge period in fashion came on the scene, and just the whole timing of everything changed.
Yeah.
And my career and life changed forever.
Were you aware of the fact that you were a supermodel? And if you were, then how did that impact your life?
I mean, I was so young. I was so, you know, at that age, you're really rebellious. You don't want to be pigeonholed. So, I hated the word supermodel. And, you know, it's just, I was sort of a turd. I don't know. I think I was age appropriate is all I can say. I was melancholy. I was fighting with everything internally, and fighting with being famous, and feeling being pulled in so many directions, and not really knowing that I had the biggest opportunity in the world, and probably, you know, not enough gratitude for it. And I needed to get sober to really learn about all of those things: gratitude, humility, peace, service. I definitely got lost a little bit. I think I was just, you know, a young kid. So when I see people that get really famous and get in trouble really young, and people are like, you know, bitching about them, I'm like, you don't really understand. It's really hard to find yourself in the midst of all of that.
Yeah.
Because everybody's telling you who you are or how great you are or whatever, and you don't have a clue. And your mistakes are not allowed to. You're not allowed to make mistakes because they have so much. There's so much riding on you, and there's expectations, and I just think it's really messy. Nobody can really explain fame, and people all think they want it, and it's at that age, it's not really a great thing. I don't think necessarily.
That's interesting.
Today, I have so much gratitude for my life, but I'm older. I'm 46 years old. I feel like I can hold a lot. I can hold a lot more, but I couldn't back then.
Right.
I had a lot of fun, so I'm not going to say, and I did learn a lot, but had I known what I know today, I would be like asking questions and asking Richard Avedon, like, what lens are you using, or watching how he lights, you know, a set, or, you know, I would have been more humble and really paying attention. I think I was just so like, I don't know.
For me, it started with Linda Evangelista, when she had that. I think it was her that had that line, "I don't get out of bed for less than $10,000 a day." So there was this whole kind of diva perception about the group of you, and she was older than you.
Yeah, she was older.
But it stuck around for the supers to come, and that there was this diva-esque kind of.
Yeah, we got, I think, Kate Moss and Shalom and I, and
who you're still really good friends with, right?
I'm still good friends with them. I think we kind of were the antithesis of that, and so that's probably some of it too. I mean, our era was the grunge era, and there was a huge pushback to kind of this 80s gluttony. There was so I can't blame it, take all of the responsibility on myself. It was something that was happening socially with the youth. We're kind of, there was a new kind of rebellion happening, which was the grunge music and the look. Everything got very simple instead of so like over the top. Right. Everything got either deconstructed or very simple. Yeah. And so I think we were part of that mentality as well, which was pushing against that sort of thought, that 80s over the top stuff.
You took environmental classes at NYU, is that correct? When did that happen?
Like when I was, was about 23, 24.
And why did you take them?
I was already curious about the environment, and I knew that we were facing some problems, even though I was literally only hearing about like the ozone, and Al Gore was vice president and he was starting to speak about things. I knew in fashion at the time, like I started just kind of putting things together. I was like, gosh, there's a lot of waste and there's a lot of chemicals and paper, and so I started putting things together. I didn't really think about clothing because fast fashion didn't actually even exist. And we didn't have as many seasons that big designers were even producing for. They literally only did 2 seasons. And maybe if they were lucky, they did couture, but couture's like another level, you know?
Right.
So it was just a very different time. Business was not corporate. It has become a, big conglomerates own whole groups of fashion houses, where that wasn't like that before. Fashion houses were owned by the family or by a private entity. So it's very different today. And we didn't have social media.
Can you just quickly explain what couture is?
Oh, so couture still is handmade clothing, literally, the finest materials. They're kind of like the biggest expressions of art for a designer. They're like fantasy pieces, and you buy them sort of one of a kind, and they're made for you. So it doesn't matter if your size or height, anything. You order it, it's made for you. Right. And they're exquisite. They're artisanal, and they're one of a kind. They're not mass produced. Right. Sometimes they never get produced. Literally, they're just one piece for the show, and that's it.
Amazing. They really are works of art.
They are works of
special.
Art. And I hope that tradition lasts in fashion. I'm sure it's not financially very sustainable for designers, but it is such an amazing, special thing that craftsmanship is still honored, and art is still honored, and as a part of fashion rather than just selling.
You joined the NRDC. Is that what it's called?
Natural Resources Defense Council.
Was that after your time at NYU?
Oh yeah. That was when I moved out here, and Auden was already born, and
your son was born. We kind of skipped over that a little bit. How old is he now?
He's 19.
He's 19. And he's driving, and he's
begrudgingly. For me.
Isn't that like the scariest thing? Like, you think when they're toddlers, like you're worried about them falling, but then when they get a driver's license and keys.
It's hard being a parent. It never. It's hard letting them go. It's like having your heart walking around on the streets.
Yes, it really is. That's such a good description.
It is.
Which is why, my favorites can call through on the Do Not Disturb.
Exactly.
I can't, risk them calling, right? And not answering. So, at this point, after your son is born and you've joined the NRDC, you're beginning to really understand how fashion is impacting climate change. And so what then do you do?
Well, first, when I started working with NRDC, they were like pretty much one of the first organizations I started working with, and I sat on an advisory board for them, and we started lobbying just simple things that were affecting California. And then they started something called Clean by Design, and they had a scientist who was going to China and literally did a whole study on what the effects were of factories in China on the environment.
Yeah.
And then they came back with best practices. So that kind of, was an education for me. And then
these are clothing manufacturers.
Yeah, okay. Clothing manufacturers. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. And so that information was extremely helpful. And then there was more and more information coming out about fast fashion, and people were getting exposed on slave labor or child labor and things like that. So you have the humanitarian issues, and then you have the environmental issues, and it just, all the information was slowly coming together. And then also a lot of information was coming out about climate change during the time my son was young. And I just started putting pieces together and building more and more information, and then 2010, I think, I started really trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I was getting close to 40.
Yeah.
I was eking my way up there, and it was a time of reflection, and I just was blessed enough to have some people give me some great advice.
Yeah. Were you did you ever feel like you would be in conflict with the industry that had given you so much?
Oh yeah, I was really worried I was going to be in conflict. I thought for sure, and I'm sure it did actually affect my work when I launched Master and Muse in 2013. Also, people thought nobody got it. It was way ahead of its time. Master and Muse was an online store for responsibly made fashion and accessories. And we were in partnership with a much bigger online store called Ukes.
Okay.
And they were our platform and our partner. And it was definitely ahead of its time, even though we were selling people's stuff. We were lifting up young designers. I think a lot of the industry was like, whatever, sort of eye roll at me. And it just took some time, and people, of course, the message started getting out there, and more people started talking about it, and climate change became a very big topic. And then the data was coming out that fashion was actually one of the biggest polluters on the planet. And so, I guess I didn't look so crazy.
So can you just tell, how should people be shopping now? What should they be looking for? What should they be looking to avoid?
Well, I think the biggest issue, there's a few. The problem for consumers today is that there's still not enough transparency in the industry. Brands are not willing to talk about what they're doing, even if they're doing something positive for the environment or positive for their supply chain, because they feel like if they're not doing it perfectly, they don't want to say it because they're afraid they'll get in trouble by the trolls. And I don't blame them, but I've been urging...
These are like climate change internet trolls?
No, they're just... It's just internet trolls. Okay. It's like anybody will bitch about everything now. You fart the wrong way and everybody's on you. And what I've been trying to urge companies to do is better to come out and say what you're doing than to say nothing. This perfectionistic paralysis is really holding us up.
That's such a good term.
Yeah. And it needs to stop. People need to stop bashing one another if you're not doing something perfectly, because no one's perfect. Basically, we'd have to just stop making anything and everything and go back to living in the natural world, like cave people. And that's not going to happen.
Right.
So Anyway, the point being is just that's one of the biggest problems that consumers just don't know. You can't throw clothes away, and we don't have enough recycling reciprocals for textiles.
Okay, I'm just pausing just for a second. You can't throw clothes away.
You can't throw clothes and textiles or towels or sheets in the trash.
Underwear?
No, they don't
Nothing.
get recycled.
Okay, so what you're supposed to recycle your underwear?
Well, yeah, believe it or not, yes.
Okay.
So there's a company called ICO, and they have some boxes set up at H&M to take back anything, and they literally they recycle it. They separate things. They break down what they can. They donate what they can, and then they make things like, you know, insulation for your seats in your car and your house and stuff like that.
So nothing goes to waste.
Or new fibers, so nothing goes to waste.
Okay.
Because otherwise we're clogging up landfills with clothes that don't necessarily biodegrade really fast.
Is it just H&M that does that?
Right now, I have not seen anything municipally. If somebody sees something in the United States municipally, let me know, because it's something I, you know, definitely want to try to see happen here in California or in LA.
Yeah.
But it would also require, there's more to it. There's a back-end business where you have to have people who can recycle it, break down the fibers, all of that.
Yes.
Hello, it's a good business. Here's some innovation, people.
Right.
So that's one thing. The other thing is, you know, just buy less.
Yeah.
You know, buy less and purchase for long term rather than short term.
Like staple pieces.
Yeah, clothes are not disposable. And think about the true price of something. So just because you got a great deal and it cost you $5.99 does not mean that's the true cost.
So what's the true cost?
The true cost is usually a lot. It's probably quadruple that.
Because
the planet, for all the raw materials that were extrapolated to create that one T-shirt, and also the people are probably not getting paid fairly to make that product. So I think if you're going to use it and wear it and wear it and wear it until it falls apart, or keep it or pass it down, then, or alter it, revamp it, then the clothes that you buy have real value. But if you're purchasing with the thought of like it's cheap and disposable, then you've got the totally wrong mentality.
Yeah.
And that's the way all things, I think we have to buy things in general for long term and not short term pleasure.
Yeah.
And it's a dichotomy for me to say that because I, you know, for what I do for a living. But I'm also changing what I do for a living to really speak about this and work with other brands that are trying to be sustainable. Like that's my goal now, is to really only do that kind of work.
It's beautiful.
And then where else? You can look where your stuff is made. Origins, the country of origin is important.
How so? But what do I look like? If it's made in China, is it something?
Not necessarily. China's making a lot of progress.
Okay.
But like, you know, Bangladesh can be tricky. But then again, some factories there are good.
You have to do some research.
You have to do some research.
Yeah.
Ask questions. Look on brand sites if it's not on the tag.
Right.
And then try to buy natural fibers. You know, the less polyester and blends like that we can, the better.
Yeah.
Because they're still very difficult to break down, and they're made from fossil fuels ultimately.
You talked about in the article in Net-a-Porter how you have a uniform, just really simple, like white tees. Can you just talk about that? Like just staple pieces that you can wear all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in staple pieces in your wardrobe, things that, you know, you can mix and match and that you like to wear on a regular basis. You know, everybody should have like great, well, not guys maybe, but girls, like a great pair of long boots, a great pair of jeans that you wear over and over, a nice blazer, and like, you know, a t-shirt that you love or a blouse that you love, and then there's a little black dress. Men rework that suit. I just believe in staple pieces. I think if you just keep it simple and And then you can add things, and I borrow when I go to events, or I wear vintage. I don't go buy things for events. I'm lucky. It's like rent the runway. You can do things like that. I urge all of my friends, clothing swaps. There's a lot you can do without going out and buying a cheap dress somewhere that you're not ever going to wear again. If you're going to buy it, wear it a bunch, or alter it to be something fun and new for the next season.
Yeah. And then I'm guessing once you assume your position at British Vogue as a sustainability editor, that you will be writing about designers we should be on the lookout for, who create their lines with sustainability in mind. And then I also wanted to just talk quickly about Jane Fonda, who made headlines when she went to the Oscars in a
vintage dress.
Vintage dress, with new hair, which was great. I loved her hair. But yeah, she arrived and she made a point to make sure that people knew it was vintage and why. She said she's never buying another piece of clothing ever. And you just spent some time with her. So I actually wanted to tie this back to your mom and her activism and getting arrested. And so when you and I last met in January, you were on your way to Washington, D.C.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
For a second time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
But this was with your mom.
Yes.
Yes.
So the first time I went alone, and then the second time I went to D.C., I went with my mom.
And you went for? We
went for the Fire Drill Friday for the last one in Washington, D.C. because Jane needed to go back to work. Jane Fonda needed to go back to work. She is filming a show here.
Grace and Frankie.
Yeah, Grace and Frankie.
Yeah. Fire Drill Fridays are?
Fire Drill Fridays are the manifestation from Jane Fonda hearing Greta Thunberg say our house is on fire.
Yes.
And we needed to take action on climate change. And so she was so inspired, she moved to Washington, D.C. and started this.
She moved?
She moved to Washington, D.C. for like 4 months or 6 months, something like that.
It's amazing.
Just to protest every Friday with the help and the organization of Greenpeace. And they protested on Capitol Hill every week, every Friday, demanding action on climate change, and specifically every week was about a specific topic. And they had amazing speakers from activists and people on the front lines, and it was just, they were incredible. They were incredible. And now they've moved Fire Drill Friday to California. So far, the first one was here in LA last Friday. And then I think they're going to move around, and then I've been told that they will set up tools for anyone to start a Fire Drill Friday in their community. That's coming soon.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So
we need climate change, and if we have to demand it on a local level until we can create real change in our government, then we will.
Jane Fonda's 83?
82.
82.
Unreal.
Yeah, it's unreal.
Yeah.
And so this time when you went back,
the second time I went back was the last Fire Drill Friday in D.C. and I took my mom as sort of like one, I just wanted to get her pumped up and get her back involved in stuff like this, and we wanted to be together and fight climate change together, and we got arrested together. And
how was that?
It was totally different this time. We were just in a lineup and waited outside of Capitol Hill, and then they wrote us a ticket. Whereas the last time we literally got cuffed and taken to a holding place.
Did you spend the night or no?
Not the first time. I spent all day.
You spent all day?
Yeah.
Was it all of you in one cell together?
We were in a holding, like a warehouse.
Okay.
But they separate the men and women, and they keep you cuffed all day. And
they feed you?
No, they don't feed you. No.
Really?
No.
Well,
I think they might have given us some water.
Hospitable.
No, they don't want you to do it. They're not like,
honey, you're the best.
Oh,
they don't feed you?
No, they even told us to quiet down because we were like singing songs, and they were like, no,
singing
knock it off. They were like, you're arrested, knock it off.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and they, escort you to the bathroom and fun stuff like that.
Right.
But this second time with my mom, no. It was just, I think they were expecting a much bigger crowd, and so they kept it very simple. And yeah. And then this third time in LA, we were not getting arrested. We just protested, and they actually didn't arrest anybody in the end.
Do you intend to continue
to protest?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
and it might be with other organizations for climate change. It's not like I'm only aligned with Greenpeace and Fire Drill Friday, although they have my heart. You know, if the time is right and it's something I believe in, I'll go do it.
I'm just thinking, because when we were talking earlier, and I was asking about the possible conflict between what you're bringing attention to and the world of fashion, how incredibly cool it is that British Vogue is taking the lead on this.
Yeah. Very.
And creating a space for this to be discussed and highlighted.
Yes. And
giving someone who has such a big voice in this area a voice in the world of fashion officially.
Yes.
Right?
It's a huge statement for British Vogue.
It is.
To ask me to be a contributing editor specifically for sustainability in fashion, and it brings voice to the most important issue we're facing, which is climate change. And it also will bring voice to what fashion can actually do to be a change agent, because we as consumers have so much power, but my industry specifically does influence culture. And people will make a change if they see it happening in front of them. And brands have a responsibility to do the right thing, I think. And also it's super exciting. Like, let's innovate and become a 21st century industry and show other industries how to be real 21st century industries where people and planet are first, then profit. We all have to kind of look at what enough, like, how much is enough? And lift the people up who are not getting enough and that are suffering from, you know, whether it's climate change or it's social injustices. We need to lift people up. There's too much disparity and inequality right now. And that's part of all of this. I don't think it's just about climate change. It's also about social change.
Well, it's just about lifting consciousness.
It is.
And awareness.
It is.
Yeah.
We can't live the way we have been living. And I'd say that to my son all the time. You have to pick a profession that will not just be about serving you and your interests. You have to pick a profession that will be serving others and something you enjoy. You can't just be like a guy working on Wall Street banking, you know, and taking the money and running. If you're going to do something like that, then you have to work for funds that are looking to invest in social change. You just can't today. We have to be much more, we have to be bigger than that. We have to be more expansive and more inclusive.
Well, he has a great lineage, you know, people that have been invested in change and empowerment and awareness.
He does.
So hopefully he won't fall too far from the tree.
I hope not.
We're going to get to the Dear Laura that I talked to you about, which I told you is really a Dear Amber.
Okay.
I would be interested to know how helpful it would really be. And she's talking about not shopping for 365 days, except for in thrift stores. While it might be useful to the planet, it would definitely be hurtful to others who work in the clothing business, not just sales. Personally, I think there are many more things we can do to help the planet. My question would be, is this the most impactful choice?
Well, I completely see her point. And I think there's different aspects to this. I think, yes, you could totally disrupt economies if nobody shops, and you could certainly hurt an industry that helps a lot and feeds a lot of people. You know, 1 out of 6, I think, people on the planet work somehow in the garment industry. It's a lot. So it's really about retooling the industry, which I've said, like, we need to become a 21st century industry, redo the whole supply chain. and the way we think about business has to be about people and planet first. But to her question specifically, buy less, buy better. You don't have to buy all the time. So if you only make a purchase here and there, just make it smart. But there's other things, like if you're asking for change, if you say, okay, I'm not going to put my money here, I'm demanding that you change industry, whatever industry it is, then they will, because they need you.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of power. If we all said, no, we're not going to buy this or that, you know, people, those businesses might change. But you can do simple things too, like go vegetarian, like specifically beef, a few days a week or completely, and that will do a huge amount of positive. That will be you can become vegetarian or partially vegetarian or vegan, and that will make a huge impact on the environment.
Right.
Huge.
Yeah, it's there's a ratio of the water that it takes to make a hamburger, right? I forgot what it is, but it's
everything. It's not even it's the clear cutting of the trees. You know, it's very hard on the environment, just farming in general.
Yeah.
The way we farm today is not actually sustainable.
No.
And it's not just about beef, it's also about just farming in general. Because every time we till the land, the way we're tilling, we're letting out CO2. That's actually trapped. You know, we're absorbing carbon in the dirt, and then we're letting it back out.
Right. I mean, I love your answer for her, and the only thing that I would add is just as a consumer, you know, sometimes when because I read fashion magazines. I'm going to add British Vogue to my list.
Okay.
Starting now. But when I see new trends and it says like what to buy, what to keep, what to store, I get kind of anxious if I don't have stuff on that what to buy list.
Right.
And the truth is that I don't need anymore. So to just really, you know, take a look at what gets triggered in me.
Yeah.
When I see somebody else with beautiful boots, like Barcy always has, or you know, I get this thing where my mind gets triggered. And wants to purchase something new, and it becomes a little bit of an obsession. Mine is more targeted. I don't just like to shop in general, but I'll see one particular thing and I'll just have to have it, and it might be a duplicate of something I already have, you know, or so close to it I don't need another one. But I'll get almost like tricked, or I'll trick myself into believing that I need it. And so that's what's been happening with me since I sat down with you. Is I've really been looking at that stuff with the eye of, is this just me wanting more, or is this something I really need?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like what you said to me at lunch that day, is this something you're going to wear forever?
Yeah.
And I think about that cost per wear. Like if it's, you know, a really a nice piece that is, you know, for me expensive, but if I'm really going to wear it for the rest of my life,
then
you know, once a week, then it's worth it. Yeah. So
it is. It's about that pause and conscience. Yeah. I can't say it. Consciousness.
Yes.
And mindfulness when we are going to buy something. Do I really need this? I mean, people think about what they're going to eat.
Right.
So we have to
Some
think
people.
Some people. But we have to start being much more mindful.
Yeah.
We just don't have the luxury anymore to be just getting whatever we want and taking whatever we want with no thought of how it's affecting anyone else on the planet.
Yeah.
We have to be much more mindful.
Well, I think that is a great answer for her. This was a woman who sent in the question, so hopefully she listened and got it.
So
Amber Valletta, what is next for you?
What is next? Well, I have a new position with FIT, which is the Fashion Institute of Technology. Fashion Institute and Technology, or something like that. Is that right?
And technology or of technology?
Of technology, right? Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. And they have asked me to sit on the board and then also to become their first ever sustainability educational ambassador. So I'm going to actually go there soon and sit in a class for all day with an amazing professor and listen to her class and then meet her students and then see how we can work together and how I could support them. And it's just super exciting. I'm going to learn so much. I'm really excited, a little intimidated, but really excited, and I'm helping them with some programming stuff. So it's really cool.
So what an honor.
What an honor, and really education is the key here for all of us. It's for consumers, for brands, for young designers. It's all about learning and how do we do things better.
Yeah, so great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Where can people find you on social media? We'll cut that out.
I can be found on social media through my Instagram at Amber Valletta.
Yeah.
And
that's her?
Yeah.
It's really her.
It's really me.
Yeah.
Same with Twitter, but I'm not on Twitter a ton. And Facebook, I think, is the same, but I'm not super Facebook.
We're going to talk about Facebook after this and get you in our Facebook group.
You can start there. You can start with our group.
You can start with our Facebook group. They'll be like, wait.
Just to generate conversation and keep this thing going.
I think it's really important. Like I said, we did post in our Facebook group questions for you about sustainability and fashion and not shopping, and it's definitely the question that's had the most comments and responses.
That's awesome.
Of anything that we posted in the group. If you're not in our Facebook group, please join. And you can see this comment chain, and hopefully you can see Amber's answers to all the questions in there. Amber, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was great. I'm so glad you came.
Thank you, Steve.
This was great.